minutes total, okay, 5 to 7 minutes total. For the whole, I'm just trying to, so we can move it along, and if a point is made while by one of your colleagues, instead of repeating it, if that would be okay, that would be great to keep things moving. And I'm going to be watching my clock to make sure that we keep relatively good time, all right? And it's being filmed. Yeah, well.
That's the video.
Pardon me?
It's filming, it was cutting out half my stories, I don't want to.
Oh,
This won't be shown publicly.
this is not being shown publicly. This is being done for purposes of keeping a historical archive. And so I hope well, how can I put this? It's just a record of what was said on the discussion. How is that? Okay. So to begin, I'm going to hand the microphone down to each one of you, and I would like each of you to begin by explaining the office you held and the years you held the office. All right?
My name is Sandra Gross, and I was the Evanston City Clerk from 1977 for 2 terms until 1985. Is that all, or should I give my...
No, that's fine, because I'm going to ask questions as we keep moving through the, I will ask
What would
questions.
you like me to do now?
Hand this microphone to Cheryl.
We're so well organized. My name is Cheryl Wollin. I was Alderman of the 7th Ward from 1989 to 1993, and Alderman of the 1st Ward, I just keep moving until I find a place that's open, from 2005 to 2009. I was elected city clerk in 1997, and for 3 terms, and took early retirement in 2008. So I served basically 11 and a half years.
Well, my term, I've had several offices twice. Once as an alderman, and as you know, the last time as mayor. Now you're asking me to give some numbers, and I recall I was alderman from 1982 to 2001. I was mayor from 2003 to 2008.
1993. 1993.
Yeah, what did I say?
You said 2003.
No, oh, I'm sorry. But being the mayor lasted for 16 years and ended 3.5 years ago.
I'm Sue Brady, and I served as a 3rd Ward Alderman for 2 terms, 1985 to 1993.
Okay, what we can do is I'll ask the question and we can just keep moving it back and forth if that's okay with everyone. Okay. My first question is, why did you decide to run for elected office in Evanston?
Is this where I get to talk about my league background?
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Thank you for correcting me. I didn't have it in my notes. Go ahead, please. So that's, okay.
Okay, I'm going to do it anyhow. I joined the league in 1965, and I thought I was one of the longest term members until our table, at our dinner table, Donna Gerson is 58 years, which is quite amazing, given her youth. I joined the league in 1965. My first job when I was in Northbrook was to establish a babysitting co-op because I had 5 children and I couldn't get to a meeting unless I had babysitters. We moved to Evanston in 1972, and from the first week since we got here, I started observing the Human Services Committee for the league. And if you remember, most of you do, City Hall was right across from what is St. Mary's Church. It's now an apartment building, but it used to be an old house, and that's where City Hall was. And the Human Services Committee met in the city manager's office, and we all sat around, including the alderman, including everybody in the room, and smoked. And then went right into city council and continued smoking. I mean, the whole thing was outrageous. And we met every week. I mean, the Human Services Committee met every week. And I loved it because I got out of the house for about 2 hours once a week. In 1975, I became president of the league and served for 2 years, and I think it was almost at the height of the league's membership. We had a very large membership. I'm afraid to say how many, but it was just before everybody went back to work. And so we were very active in local action. I mean, we influenced, if not wrote, the tenant landlord ordinance, the rehab ordinance, the land use policies. And one of the committees I was on, the land use committee, Eleanor Rivella was on, and I remember thinking, she is such a beautiful, smart woman. Why doesn't she ever talk? I remember that perfectly, and we know what happened to her. In 1977, like a lot of other people, I went back to work and was sporadically active until the year 2000 when I retired. And of course, during that time, working full time, I was an alderman for 8 years, as I announced. But what's interesting is that since 2001, I've been back in the league, being active in local government and observing. And this past Monday night, I observed the city council. So what comes around goes around. And without the league, I don't think I could have done any of the public work that I did do. And I don't think I would have ever had the confidence to run for office if I didn't have the league as a very strong part of my background. And what's fun is that now that I'm retired for a long time, it's a renewed energy. I mean, my interest in local government is strong, and it's a wonderful way to serve. And if any of you would like to join our local government committee, we meet at Jan Otwell's on the third Friday of every month at 9:30 for about an hour and a half, and we have a fun time.
Excuse me. Well, my first venture into the political arena was through an appointment by Jay Lytle, the then mayor, to fill the unexpired term of the 5th Ward alderman who just quit. At that time, I was principal of Haven Middle School, and Jay came over, called and said he wanted to come to see me. And when he came, I was very surprised at what he had to say, because I think I had just reprimanded in a pretty harsh way his daughter. And I thought he was coming to raise objections to it, but I think he felt that she deserved it. Well, when he found it, I told him this wasn't, my job was Haven Middle School, and that I didn't think I would be able to attend all the meetings and all so forth. Well, he said, well, that'll be okay. Well, anyway, he talked me into it, but he says, but I want you to promise me that when the unexpired term is over, that you will run. And I don't know whether I told him yes or no, but in my mind I really had question marks. So sure enough, when the time came to run, he said, you just must get out there and run. And that's why I did. And then the successive terms came, and I ran as alderman. And then in 1989, I retired as principal of Haven, but I still had time to go in my term as alderman, which ended in 2001. And I'm at home making a scrapbook about my husband, who had passed away, to let her know what all her accomplishments of her father. And then lo and behold, a bunch of people came to my house at somebody's urging and asked me would I run for mayor. I said, oh no way. I saw Joan Barr really, she had to work very hard and everything wasn't okay. And so they left, they came back again. Said, would I run? Again, I said no, and I said, you know, another thing, I said, John Norwood is running, and he's a black, and I don't think it would be good to have two black people on the, running for this office. Well, they left, and incidentally, in that group was Dennis Drummond, the person who came to my house. Well, the Sunday night after Thanksgiving, they ran into my house again. You know, Lorraine, you just have to go sit there. One of the guys, now in retrospect, I think he was telling a big fat tale. He said, oh, I was in Reverend Norwood's church today, and Reverend Norwood said that he was going to pull out, he was not going to run. I said, well, if he's not going to do it, then I will. Well, Norwood ran. So that's how I happened to get involved.
Do you want to know about how I became involved in the league or how I decided to run for office?
However you want to choose to, you can answer both. I mean, you have the option to answer both.
Oh, okay. Well, I joined the league when I was elected clerk. I had wanted to join earlier, but everybody in the office was a league member, and we couldn't all go to the meetings. But anyway, when I was elected, that's when I joined. I came to elective office actually as an employee at the city. 1985. My career is in written communications, marketing, advertising, copywriting, etc. kind of came to an end. And so I worked as a temp for 18 months. Worked in a law office, worked in an architecture office, investment banking, real estate, etc. Well, in 1985, I came to the city and took a job in facilities management and emergency services, and started to work on budgets. So I wanted to know more about how government really operated. So I went back to school at night. And I got a master's degree in public administration. So after about four plus years there, the then city clerk, Chris Davis, had her deputy, May Inez, was retiring. And so she offered me the job as deputy city clerk. And so I took it, and everybody in the office was a member of the league. The league deputy registrars deposited their voter cards. They got the key, so you know I knew everybody. And so I worked there with her as her deputy for about 8 years. And one evening, it was quite late at night, and we were just in we were in the election season when, you know, the petitions are being circulated. And I wasn't quite sure what Chris was going to do, if she's going to run for office again, or if she was going to say bye-bye. Well, I got a call late at night from two aldermen, Alderman Feldman and Newman, and they said, we'd like you to run for city clerk. I almost fell off the chair, because I really thought Chris would run again. So, you know, I had many discussions I talked to Jack Siegel, and I talked to my family, I talked to my friends, talked to other people who had run for office, and I thought, you know, I knew about how the office operated. It was not glamorous, and it was not a money deal. It was modest, okay? But I don't know, I thought about it, and I said, well, why not? Why shouldn't I do this? And so that's how I made my decision to run for office. And of course, it was very late, and I was supported very heavily in the community as far as getting the signatures to get on the ballot. So that's how I came to elective office.
My name is Cheryl Wollin. I joined the league in 1981, and I think this is a good membership recruitment plan. I did not plan on joining. A neighbor who I had enormous respect for and I really admired said, you know, we should get more involved in this community and we should join the league. And I thought, well, it was easy for her to say. She was single, she was working. I had a toddler, I just started teaching college. It seemed like they were giving me a new course every semester. But I admired her so much. I said, well, I'll go with you to a league meeting, but I'm not making any commitments till I see what this is about. And I was drawn in, I think, by the enormous intelligence of the women that I met with and the tough issues that they were going to tackle. And so I joined. And one of the things that has always amazed me about league members is that they are so reliable. I mean, I've been in many organizations and every PTA in town, and I've been let down many times by people who said, oh, I'll do that, I'll take care of that, and they never do. League people, that just didn't happen. And so the consensus meetings, the research that we did, they were really intellectually challenging, and I really enjoyed it tremendously. I served on the local board in many roles during the course of my early leagueship, but the one that I loved the most was voter service. I'm a political science teacher and a history teacher, and so voting to me was a really big deal. And I remember registering voters at a factory on Oakton Avenue during lunch. And those of you who are deputy registrars know that as soon as somebody says they're not born in the United States, you go, oh, okay, now I gotta find out. Are they a citizen? When did they become a citizen? What court? At the time you had to know the court, the date. So this man came up to me and I said, were you born in the United States? And he said, no. I said, So I tried to get this information and he said, how long are you going to be here? And I said, well, I'll be here till about 2:30, 3, the very latest. He said, will you wait for me? And I said, where are you going? And he said, he went home and he said, I'm going home to look up my papers to tell you the exact date. I said, well, of course I'll wait for you. He came back with his citizenship papers in a gold frame. And he brought his grandmother, his aunt, and his cousin, and they all had their papers in gold frames. I could just see the marks on the wall where where they had taken they had obviously been hanging in their home, and every one of them registered to vote. From then on, I was hooked. I thought, this is what we do. This is our outreach to the community, and they were so grateful. And I've often told that story to my little 18-year-old students who barely, you have to blast them out of their seats to get them to vote sometimes. And I said to them, just think of how important it was to these people, and you're just taking it for granted. So at any rate, I really did get involved in voter service, and that was the thing that really enticed me. I got a call out of the blue one night from Mr. Persuasive J. Lytle, who I had never met in my life. And he said, well, I'd like you to serve on the Environmental Control Board. This is like during dinner, and I'm going, what? I said, I think you must have the wrong person, Mr. Lytle, because I have no background in science. I have no background in ecology or environmental studies. He goes, we don't need the science, we need you. And I said, oh. Well, when you put it like that. So he's very persuasive, and he talked me into doing this, and so I served for 2 years on the Environmental Control Board. I learned a lot. I used a lot of my league background in building consensus and working with people. We were a very, very compatible board, and we did our research, we did our homework, we looked at we interviewed. So we came up with this wonderful curbside recycling program, and we took it to the city council, and we presented a very fact-filled, statistical, informative presentation, and they voted it down. And I thought, what? how could they possibly not accept this wonderful plan that we had spent all these months preparing for? And so coincidentally, around the same time, Marge Collins, who I also did not know at the time, was a 7th Ward alderman, called and said, I'd like to have lunch with you. And I thought, this is suspicious. Why? She doesn't know me. Why would she do this? And she asked if I would be willing to run for the 7th Ward. It had never dawned on me to be in elected office. She was very persuasive. I talked to her. She said, well, just talk to Jake, who was the retiring 7th Ward alderman. And so Jake said his one little line, I remember, he goes, well, here's your chance. You want that curbside recycling program, don't you? I said, well, yeah, I do. But he goes, well, you could be a vote. And I said, well, that's true, I could. I said, but I've never run for office. I've taught political science, but I never pictured myself in the role. And he assured me that there would be lots of help and lots of guidance. And so I was elected the first time in the spring of 1989. There were 2 aldermen per ward. And Marge Collins was the other alderman that I served with. So that's the beginning of this.
Not 1989.
1989, I was elected.
Oh, okay, all right, for the first time.
For the first time, yeah. We don't have time for the whole.
I guess I go back the furthest. I moved to Evanston in 1962, so this is year 50, and I joined the League, like you, Cheryl, at the urging of my good friend and neighbor, Judy Wilson Wyden, who became president of this Evanston League eventually. But I can remember when she said, Sandy, you should join the League of Women Voters, and I said, League of Women Voters? That sounds like an organization for my mother. But I did join, and this was the mid-60s. Lyndon Johnson was president. We were all studying the war on poverty and learning about the maximum feasible participation of the poor. And at some point, they asked me if I would edit the 1970 edition of This Is Evanston. I want to mention 3 things. I said if I had a title for these remarks, it would be "The League Made Me Do It." And the 3 things I want to tell you about quickly, I hope, are This Is Evanston, the Plan Commission, which I served on and which was an outgrowth of my editing This Is Evanston, and finally chairing something called the Civic Center Committee. And I'll try to quickly explain how all these have to do with the League of Women Voters. Well, when asked to edit, I don't know who the new editor is, but at any rate, I'm an English teacher, so of course, what's to edit a book, right? You just know grammar, spelling, and punctuation, and there you have it. I had no idea that I was chair of 30 people who had all these subcommittees doing research on Evanston history, schools, everything. And I learned so much about the city, and we were very proud of the finished product, and we were invited to present it to the aldermen. At that time, the city manager was Wayne Anderson, and he had helped us. He was very cooperative with the League's project of This Is Evanston, and the mayor was Ed Vanneman. And this is now 1970, and we presented our book, This Is Evanston, to the city council, and it was given to them with very nice words by city manager Wayne Anderson. And a few days later, a few weeks later, I got a call from Ed Vanneman, who by this time had read our wonderful publication, and he invited me to serve on the Plan Commission. And I did. And the Plan Commission was more knowledge about Evanston, this time zoning, planning, land use, transportation. I really knew a lot about Evanston. And while I was serving on the Plan Commission, Ed Vanneman called again and asked if I would chair the Civic Center Committee. And the city was at that time at 1501 Oak across from St. Mary's, and it was a former country club, and it was much too small. The recreation department, the health department, everything was spread out, and they wanted to consolidate. And so he asked me to chair a committee that consisted of 4 aldermen, Connie Fitzsimmons, Marty Garrity, Jim Staples, and John Wyant. and one other Plan Commission person, Al Roop. So the six, and I was chair, and we were from different parts of town, and we were different politically, but we all shared a dislike, to put a kind word on it, of Marywood, which was a candidate for our movement. And the reason I mention at the League of Women Voters is that as chair of the Civic Center Committee, I conducted, or we, the committee conducted, a league-like study. We did a lot of research, we gathered facts, we gathered evidence, and like the building or not, it made a lot of sense. And we wrote up our report, and we presented it to the city council, and the mayor called me right away. He was extremely impressed with the work we had done. It was league-like work, and the council approved it. Anyway, at this point, having edited This is Evanston, having served on the Plan Commission, having chaired a council committee, I was very much involved in Evanston. And my kids now were in school all day, and rather than go back to school as a high school English teacher, which I could have done and had done in the past and had enjoyed it, I thought, I really want to work for Evanston. So I don't know if I'm allowed to say this or not, but I'm going to say it. I was leaving a council meeting one evening. It was in the old building, and I walked out with Ed Martin. By then, he was the new city manager. And I said, Ed, I'm ready to go to work. Is there a job opening in City Hall? He said, you should run for city clerk. Maury's not running for re-election. Maury Brown was a 20-year city clerk that preceded me. Well, it had never, ever entered my mind, but after a little consultation with my husband and some friends and all, I did. That's how I came to run for city clerk.
Great. All right. The next question is, what was the most striking aspect of the election process when you ran for office?
All right, I'll start with that. And this is the 2-minute limit or less.
Yeah.
You can shut me up or turn me off whenever. The one thing, well, it's very hard to run citywide. Evanston's a pretty big place. We needed 1,600 signatures just to get on the ballot. That means a ward organization. So that's really one very striking thing was how hard it is. Another thing was how many people worked for me. It was, you just put yourself out there, and it's remarkable how people emerge. The other, I guess, another very striking thing was how narrowly I won. There were 17,000 people who voted in that election, and I won by 300 votes. So it was a really tough election. This is what I took out of a letter that I wrote to all the workers as the campaign was winding down. It was getting close to election day, and I wanted to thank everybody. I said, by the time we vote, I will have appeared at 25 coffees, spoken before 3 retirement homes, the Reba Fellowship, the Kiwanis Club, and the Northwest Homeowners Association, participated in the League of Women Voters Candidates Forum, appeared on radio stations WNUR and WEAW, and been interviewed by the Evanston Review and the Independent Voters of Illinois. In between, I was out ringing doorbells. I have more stories about running, but you know, we don't want to be here all night.
I do think for a first-time candidate, there are 2 issues that are daunting. First of all, the financial implications of running a campaign. I mean, we're not talking about super PACs, but it does take money, and I didn't have very much, and I wasn't well funded personally. And people kept saying, don't worry about that, Cheryl, don't worry about that. And I thought, I worry about that all the time. And the second thing was that there is such a wide, diverse issue packet that you really have to know. And there are so many issues. As I had mentioned, I was steeped in garbage and landfill and stuff, but there's so much else that I needed to realize. And so I really tried very hard to learn the different issues and be prepared for all the, as Sandy said, all the debates and the public performances and the invitations to luncheons. But my first debate was, and I don't, it might have been a league debate, I don't know, it was on the stage of Haven School. And I felt pretty confident. First of all, I taught at Haven for 7 years, so I knew the stage really well. And that auditorium, I could keep Scorby kids in their seats, so I thought I could do this. And I had really studied. I had studied more than I think I can ever remember studying. So the first question was, now, what is your position on rehabilitation of the animals used in Northwestern's laboratory experiments? Well, I wasn't prepared for that one. And I have a very visual mind, so I pictured in my head like little cats on crutches and how they would be going through physical therapy. And then it dawned on me that the city has absolutely no power of regulation. And I said, well, the National Institute on Health takes care of that. The city does not monitor those. And after that question, the rest of them were a piece of cake. The rest of them I was prepared for. The second thing I think that was daunting was the doorbell ringing, the going door to door. I know how much I resented when I was making meatballs for dinner to have the doorbell ring and some stranger be at the door. So I really felt I was intruding on people's family time, and it took a lot of willpower and courage to get out there and do it. However, my campaign manager said to me, you're not thinking about it correctly. And I said, really? And she said, you're giving the people the opportunity to meet the candidate. Well, it didn't help a lot, but I did do it. And I do think that, getting out and meeting the people in the community was a huge bonus part of running for office.
Well, I just want to echo Sandy's remarks about the number of people that are involved in a citywide election. And as I told you, my entry as an elected official, as a nominee, I was really lifted along by a whole bunch of people in this community. And I did not campaign as my colleagues here did, but I was just amazed at what you must do, and it must be accurate, on time, and just the generosity of people in the community that have faith in a person like myself. So.
Thank you. Well, I suppose that I'm probably the only one up here that's had to run for elective office when we had 18 aldermen. 2 from who? I wasn't who? You didn't run? All of yes, you did. This group here. And then the second time, of course, we knew that it being the mayor, that it was going to be changed to just what we have today. But I think I don't have maybe the best feeling toward running for office, particularly when we had 18 aldermen. I thought it was a great waste of time. In a community where you have 74,000 to 75,000 people, and you're divided into wards, and you're just going out battling with each other to who's going to be elected. I thought that we probably could have used that time with some seminars on how to be a good alderman, or something else could have been going on at the time that would have been a benefit to the community. Now, running for office for mayor was the joy of my life. At that time, I just had such wonderful people who helped me. There was a building downtown that the owner of it let us rent No, we didn't rent. Let us use that building. It was huge, and the people who had been in there before forgot and left the telephones in, and they were working, so we didn't have to pay for a telephone. And then there were tables there. Everything that you wanted was there, and I received such support from so many people. I think that did something for me. It let me know what good people we have here in Evanston and how supportive they can be and run things for you. I'm looking at Helen. Helen was the one that did my first brochure back when I was running for office. But she knew how to do it, and I thought that was a wonderful thing. But you know, when you've been through two types of, at least a different number of people on the council, and you've gotten older, you view things just a little bit differently. And you can see how that we might have been able, back in the days when we had 18, that we could have utilized the resources of the people who ran for office, who just have had all kinds of experience. But instead we wasted our time with a charade of going to just speaking to people in the wards where we were, and then being introduced to how people can do things during the election process. I remember there was one church in the 5th Ward that they had trouble with because all kinds of fancy things were going on down there. So I just thought it could have been better. So I really didn't particularly feel that that was the way. Now, I just have to say this, then I'm going to stop. And you know, I've said to a friend of mine, after having all the experience that I had, that I wish I had Mayor Daley's power just for 6 months. 6 months, you would have seen a change.
We are so old up here. It's just I mean, my daughter ran for mayor of Portland, Oregon, and the election was last week, and she lost in the primary. But the election that she ran was wonderful and beautiful, and I'm so proud of her. But it's so different than it was when any of us ran for office ourselves. I mean, it has no bearing on reality. And so to talk about our experiences for anyone who's interested in running, it's as different as night and day. But having said that, I have a few tiny, just picking up on what Lorraine said, I bet everybody who was around in this room supported retention of the 18-member council. I mean, I know most of you did. And I was among you. I have to tell you, we were wrong. Lorraine is right. Whether 9 is the right number, I'm not sure. I happen to think 2 aldermen from 6 wards would be 12 in total, would probably be the most beneficial. But 18 was a large council. The obvious advantage is that you had a partner to solve problems and do research with. In terms of the electoral process, I have to say 2 words in terms of at least the 3rd ward, and that is L.B. Lauterbach, who is still with us over at the Mather. And you did not do anything in the 3rd ward without L.B. and Ned's approval. Ned was a former alderman also. And she made you knock on doors. And it didn't make any difference whether you had opposition or not. You had to go out and knock on doors. And as long as this isn't going to go public, my first opponent for my first election was a man named Lee Lickentrick. I'll never forget his name. And no one knew him. I certainly didn't know him. And Albie made me go out and knock on door after door after door. And when the election results came in, he got 25% of the vote. And to this day, I don't know what I did wrong before I had cast a vote to have 25% of the people vote against me. But running for public office is not fun. you have to love public policy, whatever level of government you're interested in. But the electoral election campaign, except for a very few, is difficult, and I'm not sure in today's age whether it's better or worse, but it's certainly different.
Okay, thank you on your comments so far. The next question is, what surprised you about the actual work of the position? Yeah, you know.
What surprised me was how important constituent issues were. And the big issues that occurred when I served, and I served with Beth Davis for the entire 8 years, were the development of the research park and the revision of the zoning ordinance. Two huge, huge endeavors. And they took every ounce of time that we had, and I was working, of course, all this time, and there wasn't a Monday night or a Wednesday night that we weren't meeting on one or the other. But what surprised me was, as enjoyable as they were, and as hard as they were, and as necessary as they were, what surprised me was the rewards you got from serving constituents. And I was thinking about this, and one of the biggest things I could think of is the tiniest thing, and that is that we were able to reserve, I forget, 10 parking spaces in the Chicago Avenue garage right across or next to Jewel for shoppers. And I just took great pride in that we were able to do something for our constituents. So in terms of, I think the other part of it was just satisfaction or two things. Late hours, which, I mean, we never got out of there 1 o'clock in the morning, and most of us were working. It was very, very hard. And the other thing that was very dissatisfying was the number of aldermen who were not prepared. And that was very defeating, because you needed to be prepared in order to participate in these weighty discussions. But on balance, it's the people who made the difference.